Let's come back to Khomeini and the Iranian Revolution, because what he brings forth is a completely different theory of governance and leadership by a cleric, not coincidentally himself, which is unprecedented in the prior period of Shia jurisprudence and governance. So describe, if you would, the basic principles of his new idea of governance and the ways in which it does diverge from what had happened before.
Well, when in the 10th century the Shias no longer had a living imam, in other words, the last imam went into hiding, into heaven, by definition there could not be legitimate religious authority on earth, because that legitimate authority could only be by one of the descendants of Ali from his direct line. If he's in hiding, if he's in heaven, then you cannot have religious authority. So in some ways the Shiites gave up on the notion of having rightful Islamic political authority in the world, and they came to terms to, in a de facto way, accept whoever was ruling. So the Sunni caliphs are illegitimate, but you don't have a challenger to them, so that's the way it is. Or even later on, when you had Shia rulers, monarchs in Iran, they still were not the genuine article. They were better than the Sunni caliphs. So, but still you accepted them conditionally. You accepted them so long as they were protecting Shiism, serving the interests of the religion, and the like. And the Shiites expected actually that logically, in the absence of the hidden imam, you shouldn't have good government, in the sense that by definition things would be bad and would get worse until you arrive at the end of time. Now, Khomeini sort of took this idea and reasoned very differently, that God had sent religion not for it to be ignored, but to be lived. And religion could not thrive unless it was in government. And if government is going to be based on religion, then logically those who are properly educated in religion ought to be ruling. In a sense, actually, his idea was really Plato's Republic, that there is a properly educated class for government, and that the masses do not know, and those who are properly educated have greater wisdom. And this is reflected also in the Greek influence on Islamic philosophy, in which actually Ayatollah Khomeini excelled. He was a philosopher more than he was a jurist and a theologian. So this is very much the tradition of Greek philosophy, Aristotelian philosophy, Platonic philosophy within Islam itself. Now, Khomeini went around the problem of, well, how can you have a truly Islamic government in the absence of the hidden imam? And the way he argued is that this is not, we're not doing what the Messiah is supposed to do. We're merely expediting his return or preparing the earth for his return, that this is an interim step. It's actually has very close parallels to the way in which after Zionism was created, there was resistance among Orthodox Jews that Zionism is trying to do what is the task of the Messiah, which is the return of the Jews to the Holy Land.
To Israel.
To Israel. And that ultimately the Rabbi Cooks, father and son, created a bridge by suggesting that Israel is not the fulfillment of the Messianic promise, but it's the important step in that direction. So Khomeini basically made the similar kind of an argument, that the Islamic Republic in Iran was a necessary and important step in fulfillment of the Shia Messianic dream, but it was not the Messianic dream realization itself. Mm-hmm. And now this is very different from the Sunni conception of fundamentalism. I mean, the only similarity here is the idea of Islamic government being the better government, and government being defined as being based on religious law. But the argument for why you need an Islamic government and the conception of what an Islamic government is wholly different between Shias and Sunnis.
Well, you have, it seems, in the reaction to the Ayatollah Khomeini's assertion of this new theory of governance, there was a tendency, on the other hand, to begin to identify him as the hidden imam. And this is not something, as you describe in your book, that he went out of his way to discourage. So that, on the one hand, you have this almost cult of worship or followership of the Ayatollah Khomeini himself, while on the other hand, some of the senior Ayatollahs in Iran and in Iraq reject completely the theory that a cleric should be considered as, you know, the next stage setter for the return of the hidden imams.
Whatever Khomeini wrote theoretically while he was still in exile in Iraq in 1974, ultimately when you're on a campaign for power, just like any political campaign, just like an election campaign in America, in the heat of the struggle, you monopolize and manipulate whatever you can politically in order to get to where you want. So in other words, that whatever he thought strategically about Islamic government's one thing, but tactically getting the Islamic government in power is something else. And then when you get there, you know, how do you are able to optimize your rule? And I think at the tactical level, he and his followers manipulated popular conceptions about religion much more at will. They did try to equate him with the hidden imam. They did try to equate the Shah's regime as either with the Sunni caliphs who had massacred Hussein in 680 AD, or with the enemies of the hidden imam. That they did try to very cleverly elevate Khomeini above other ayatollahs as something more than the others. And they did try to invest him with a cult of personality that was larger than just a religious cleric. And then when he became the ruler of Iran, that process continued.